I married Samuel because I believed in the fairy tale, the kind where love burns hot, fast, and bright, and all the complications fade under its light. My mother called it foolish. I called it romantic. I didn't realize they were the same thing. The first time I brought him home, she watched him the way a mother wolf watches fire, intently, suspiciously, and with the quiet knowing that this was something meant to destroy. "He's intense," she said after he left. "That's not love. That's possession with charm." I laughed. "You just don't like him because he's direct." "No," she replied. "I don't like him because he looks at you like you're already his." I was 29, independent, and ready to prove I knew what I was doing. Samuel was successful, polished, and magnetic. He said all the right things, bought me flowers just because, and made me feel like I was the center of his world. But there was always a cost. He didn't like my best friend from university. Too loud, too feminist. He didn't want me wearing red lipstick, not for married women. He didn't like when I went out with coworkers, even female ones, because what kind of married woman stays out after 9? But he loved me. He told me that every night, sometimes between kisses, sometimes through clenched teeth. And I believed him, because sometimes love sounds like a lullaby, and sometimes it sounds like a locked door. The wedding was beautiful. A seaside estate, candles, champagne, guests whispering how lucky I was. I walked down the aisle in ivory silk, thinking, this is the beginning of everything good. It wasn't. It was the beginning of everything I had to survive. The first year was like holding my breath underwater. Arguments that felt like interrogations. Silent treatments for days. Apologies that arrived like performances, roses and rehearsed lines. Once, I misplaced a document from his office, something he'd asked me to scan. He shouted so hard, I felt my ears ring for hours. He slammed the door so hard a frame fell off the wall. But the next morning, pancakes, tulips. I overreacted. Work is killing me. You know I love you. I said it was okay. It wasn't. 16 months into the marriage, I missed my period. The test came back positive. I stood in the bathroom, gripping the sink, waiting for the rush of joy. But it didn't come. It was fear. A sharp kind. Still, when I told him, he smiled. A baby. This changes everything. I hoped it did, but it didn't. It only made the walls feel tighter. He became more controlling, watched what I ate, monitored my schedule, got angry when I said I was too tired to have sex. Once accused me of not acting excited enough to be carrying his child. At 3 months pregnant, I still hadn't told my mother. She'd ask too many questions. I hadn't seen her in a year, not really. Samuel didn't like her energy. Said she was negative, suspicious. But she'd call. I'd let it ring. Then came the night, everything changed. I don't remember what the argument was about. That's the thing about abuse, it's never about the thing. All I remember is his hand, my back hitting the kitchen counter, the sound of something inside me twisting, and the way the room looked different from the floor. I woke up in the hospital, alone. There were 2 nurses. One held my hand, the other read from a chart. 3 months, she said softly. The trauma was severe. I'm sorry, the pregnancy couldn't be saved. That's how I lost my baby. Not to a miscarriage. To a man who said he loved me. I didn't cry. Not right away. The grief didn't come in sobs. It came in silence. The kind of silence that fills your lungs and makes you wonder if breathing is worth it. He showed up the next day with lilies. My favorite. Acted confused. Hurt. They said it was stress, he told the nurse. She's been overwhelmed lately. I said nothing, because something else was growing now. Not a child. Not love. Something colder. Sharper. Clarity. That night, I lay in the hospital bed and counted the ceiling tiles. 46. I told myself if I survive this, he won't know what hit him. Because there's a very thin line between love and hate. And he had finally crossed it. The day I left the hospital, I didn't go home. I took a cab to my aunt's place across town. A woman Samuel had never met. I told her everything. She didn't flinch. just hugged me and said, "Let's start with safety. The rest will follow." The plan formed slowly. I made calls. Quietly. A lawyer. A therapist. A women's shelter liaison who knew exactly how these things go. I gathered documents, screenshots, hospital records. I changed my passwords. I bought a second phone. I was grieving. But I wasn't done. Because he thought he broke me. But what he did was wake something I didn't know I had. And I was going to take back my name. My life. And make sure the next time he told a woman, "I love you," the words rotted in his throat. So, if you're watching this and you've ever asked, why didn't she leave? Understand this. Sometimes we don't leave because we're weak. Sometimes we stay until we're strong enough to leave with a plan so tight, it strangles the man who tried to silence us. And when that plan unfolds, it doesn't come with shouting. It comes with documents, witnesses, cold timing. It comes with consequence. This was the moment I stopped surviving and started calculating. And if you've made it this far, if this story hit a place in your chest you didn't expect, subscribe. Not for me, but because someone out there needs to hear that leaving isn't the end of your story. Sometimes it's where your story actually begins. I promise, this is just the start. I didn't pack much when I left. Just a backpack, really, a few clothes, my ID, copies of the hospital report, a flash drive full of emails and photos, and a burner phone. That flash drive became my weapon. Because while he thought he was clever, Samuel was lazy. Men like him always are. They think charm covers everything. They forget about paper trails. I hadn't told anyone everything, not yet. Not even my aunt. She knew he hurt me. She didn't know how bad. She didn't know about the baby. I kept that part like a cracked rib, painful, but invisible, hidden under sweaters and silence. But grief changes you. And I wasn't going to let his story be the only one that existed. He called. Of course he did. 8 missed calls on my new phone by the second morning. Then emails. Then blocked number voicemails. "Delilah, come home. We can fix this. You're being dramatic. This is stress talking. Let's talk. Face to face. Don't ruin everything over a misunderstanding." Misunderstanding. Like he forgot the hospital. Like he forgot the bruises. Like he forgot the blood. He sent flowers to my aunt's address. That's how I knew he was watching again. I hadn't told anyone where I was. He was checking. Tracking. That's what predators do when their prey goes missing. But I was done being prey. And I wasn't going to run. I was going to set the trap. The first part of my plan was to look like I was spiraling. I needed him to underestimate me. So I replied to one message. Just one. "I need space. I'll call you soon." He took the bait. He stopped calling. Started texting again. Long messages, filled with manipulations disguised as affection. "Remember our trip to Lagos? You were happiest in that white dress. You're not thinking straight, baby. This is grief. It's not me." Classic gaslighting. But I didn't flinch. I screenshot everything. Every message. Every timestamp. Every emoji-laced apology that tried to sweep my trauma into the category of bad day. Meanwhile, I met with my lawyer, Amaka. Sharp. Calm. The kind of woman who wore her hair in a tight bun and didn't flinch at words like assault or loss. She reviewed the hospital record, then looked at me and said, "We don't just have grounds. We have fire." We filed for a restraining order under a pseudonym first, delayed notice, emergency clause. I knew it wouldn't stop him from trying, but it would show up later, when it mattered. Next, we began preparing the full case. Abuse. Loss. Intent to harm. We weren't just going for divorce. We were going for reputation. I started a paper trail that led nowhere. Told a mutual friend, one I knew would talk, that I was staying with someone new. A man. An ex. Within 12 hours, I got a call from a private number. I didn't answer. Then I received a photo, a grainy, zoomed-in picture of me coming out of a clinic. I had been there for a follow-up exam. Nothing serious. But he was tracking me. Again. I saved the photo. Sent it straight to Amaka. "Perfect," she said. "That's stalking." This wasn't about just leaving anymore. It was about building a wall of truth he couldn't scale. But then came the real twist. I received an anonymous message through a secure inbox tied to the flash drive's cloud. Just one sentence. "You're not the only one." There was an attachment. A voice recording. It was a woman's voice. Nigerian accent. Mid-30s, maybe.
Crying.
He said the same thing to me right after he grabbed my neck. Her name was Ifeoma. 3 years ago, they dated. She filed a police report, but dropped it when he threatened to release private photos of her online. She disappeared after that.
Moved.
Changed cities.
But she heard about me.
Through a friend. Through whispers. Through a forum post I left under a pseudonym. And she wanted to help. I called her the next day. She answered on the first ring. "I'm scared," she said. "I know," I replied. "But we're stronger together." That's when I knew this wasn't personal anymore. This was a pattern. And Samuel was about to meet the part of me he had never planned for. The part that had survivors on speed dial. We gathered 3 women by the end of that week. 3. Each with a version of the same story: violence,
Threats.
isolation,
Control.
2 were willing to speak on record. That was all I needed. We weren't just preparing for court. We were preparing for war. A legal, strategic, reputation-shattering war. Then came the night I knew he felt it. He showed up at my aunt's gate. I watched from the kitchen window. He had flowers. A bottle of wine. The same fake smile he wore at our wedding. My aunt didn't open the gate. He waited 15 minutes. Then left the flowers at the curb. No note. No goodbye. Just a slow, angry walk back to his car. Like a man watching his control slip through his fingers like dust.
Good. Let him feel that.
Because that's what he made me feel for 2 years. Powerless, voiceless, erased. The final twist? 2 days later, I got a message from his employer. Apparently, they had received a sealed legal letter regarding allegations pending investigation. A courtesy heads up. He was under review. He was being watched now, not just by me, but by people who could ruin him without raising their voice. I walked into my new apartment that night. Bare walls, a mattress on the floor, no furniture yet, and I smiled. Because I had nothing. And yet I had everything. Freedom.
Proof.
A plan. And the one thing Samuel would never hold again. Control. Freedom doesn't always feel the way you think it will. Sometimes it's not a deep breath of fresh air. Sometimes it's just walking into a quiet apartment and realizing you don't have to flinch when a key turns in the lock. That was my first real moment of peace, standing barefoot in my new place, surrounded by boxes and silence, with no man watching my every move, no voice calling me dramatic for needing space, no fake apologies blooming like weeds over bruises. But peace doesn't last long when you still have work to do. And my work wasn't finished. Not until Samuel learned what it was like to be powerless in public. The difference between shame and consequence is who controls the story. He spent 2 years making sure no one believed mine. Now I was going to make sure no one could ignore it. It started with the report. Amaka filed it formally. 3 women, 1 hospital record, timestamps, photos, digital correspondence, location data. We compiled it into a timeline so clean, it read like a documentary script. The restraining order became official. He was served at his office. His assistant called me anonymously. She used to smile politely at me whenever I brought Samuel lunch, never looking too long, never asking too much. I remembered her name, Ada. She told me. He went pale.
Said it was a mistake.
Then slammed his door so hard, his awards fell off the shelf. I didn't gloat. I simply said, "Thank you for letting me know." Because I didn't need celebration. I needed results. The firm put him on administrative leave. That's the phrase they used. Not suspension. Not discipline. Just a quiet, professional pause. He tried to get ahead of it. I know him too well. He probably spun some story about a jealous ex, probably cried in the HR meeting and said he was being targeted. But men like Samuel never understand that the strongest story isn't the loudest one, it's the one with receipts. While he scrambled to control the narrative, I was already 10 steps ahead. I met with a journalist, discreet, independent, with a background in domestic abuse reporting. I told her everything off record. She agreed not to publish anything without my consent. But I gave her everything. The texts, the call logs, the email he sent me after the miscarriage that said, "Try to think of this as a reset. Maybe next time we'll do it right." That line, that single sentence, it would rot his reputation if anyone ever saw it. And now it was sitting in her file. Not for revenge, but for leverage. You see, I wasn't going to destroy Samuel in one dramatic courtroom moment. I wasn't going to scream, "You ruined me," in front of flashing cameras. I was going to do what he did to me. Make it slow. Make it quiet.
Make it last.
The next step was his family. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why bother? But they mattered. His mother and 2 sisters had always tiptoed around our marriage, never questioning, never intervening. But I sent them one email each. Brief, respectful, factual. I included a copy of the hospital discharge summary. I didn't ask for support. I didn't accuse them of anything. I just said, "This is what your son did. I'm telling you so you can never say you didn't know." His younger sister replied. One line. "I'm sorry. I believe you." That was enough. Because silence is complicity, and one crack in the wall is all it takes to bring the whole thing down. Meanwhile, Samuel's texts grew frantic. "You're ruining my life. You're not like this. I never laid a hand on you." That last one made me laugh. It came exactly 40 days after the hospital visit where I lost the baby. Funny how people who destroy you still think they can define you. I didn't respond. Not because I was scared, but because silence was my sharpest knife. Let him sit with the weight of being ignored. Let him feel what I felt when I begged him through sobs to stop, and he said, "Why are you so emotional?" Then came the private investigator. He sent one to follow me. That much became clear when I started seeing the same silver car parked across from my building 3 days in a row. The investigator made the mistake of asking my neighbor about me, an old woman named Mrs. Fola, who watered her plants with too much gossip. She told me immediately. So I took a photo of the car, then another, then sent them, along with a cease and desist letter, straight to Amaka. We filed harassment charges the next morning. Samuel was trying to get dirt on me, looking for anything to twist in court, or maybe just to scare me. But I had already scrubbed my past, locked down my accounts. I was 10 steps ahead because fear had taught me how to anticipate. He thought I was still the woman who forgave him after he punched a hole through the bathroom door. But that woman died the day I lost our child. What survived was someone new, and she was not interested in peace. She was interested in justice. The final nail came when Ifeoma, his ex, agreed to go public. Not in the news. Not in the courtroom. She published a blog post. Raw, personal, quietly titled, "When Love Tries to Kill You." She didn't name him.
She didn't have to.
The details were unmistakable. The timeline lined up. And the voice, hers, was undeniable. People started talking. Women started commenting. Other names appeared. Samuel's name didn't have to be mentioned to be ruined. He started losing clients. Invitations dried up. Mutuals went cold. He posted a vague message online. "Don't believe everything you hear. People love to lie when they're bitter." The comments dragged him. His account went private a day later. That's how you know the story is no longer yours to spin. It belongs to the people you hurt. And they're finally speaking louder than your charm ever did. When Amaka called to say he's considering settling, I didn't smile. I didn't relax. I just asked, "How long until it's over?" She said, "Soon." That night, I made tea in my own kitchen, stood by my own window, let the steam hit my face. And I realized this wasn't the end of the fight, but it was the beginning of his downfall. And the best part? I didn't even have to raise my voice. They say revenge is best served cold. But what they never tell you is how long you have to keep your hands steady while the fire still burns in your chest. The news came on a Tuesday morning. Amaka called while I was slicing an orange. Her voice was calm, but the edge of satisfaction was there. He's been disbarred from the arbitration council. Officially. I didn't reply right away. Just set the knife down, wiped my hands, and exhaled. That one line meant everything. No more soft landings for him. No more boardroom protections or professional titles to shield him. His career wasn't just on pause, it was broken. Permanently. It hadn't taken a scandal. No paparazzi. No trending hashtags. Just a relentless buildup of receipts and women refusing to be quiet. Samuel thought power came from control. But real power? It comes from taking your pain and weaponizing it into evidence. I wasn't the only one who brought him down. I was just the first to stop whispering. After the arbitration board ruling, the firm quietly severed ties. No press release. Just a generic statement about professional standards and values. He was erased from their website within hours. I found out later he applied to 2 other firms and was denied both times.
Good.
Let him learn how it feels to be the liability. To have his name whispered in backrooms, not with admiration, but with warnings. He tried to pivot, of course. Online courses. Coaching. I watched from a distance as he tried to rebrand himself as a consultant. One of those vague titles men wear when they're trying to bury something. But people talk. And the internet never forgets. Every time he posted a new venture, someone would link Ifeoma's blog. Or comment with, "Is this the same guy from the story about the woman who miscarried after an accident?" He tried to scrub it. But you can't scrub truth. Not when it's been multiplied. And now, Samuel's face was synonymous with failure. He called me one last time. I don't know how he got the new number. Maybe someone slipped. Or maybe he paid for it. But it was him. I let it ring 3 times. Then answered. He didn't say hello. Just started with, "You happy now?" His voice was lower than I remembered.
Horse.
I didn't respond. He went on. "You ruined my life, Delilah. Everything. I lost everything." Still, I said nothing. Are you going to say anything? Or just sit there smug? So I answered quietly. You hit your pregnant wife so hard she lost the baby. You threatened women.
You stalked me.
I didn't ruin your life. You did that by being who you are. Silence. Then he said the one thing I didn't expect. I miss you. And I almost laughed. Miss me? Miss the woman you tried to erase? Miss the silence I gave you while you dismantled me piece by piece? I didn't answer that either. I hung up, blocked the number. That was the last time I heard his voice. And I hope it stays that way for the rest of my life. I moved again after that. A better place. Higher floor. More windows. It wasn't about hiding. It was about starting over somewhere that didn't remind me of the version of me that once begged him not to raise his voice. The new apartment had white walls, hardwood floors, and a view that overlooked the ocean. Every morning I'd open the windows, let the light in, and just breathe. I started sketching again. Not for work, just for me. Women's faces, mostly. Bold lines. Clear eyes. I filled 3 notebooks in a month. My therapist asked me once what I would tell the woman I was back then, the one crying in the ER, clutching her belly, lying to the nurse about how it happened. I thought about it for a while, then said, I tell her she's not crazy.
She's not weak.
And one day, the silence will be his, not hers. I meant it, because silence used to feel like fear. Now it feels like victory. Ifeoma and I met in person, finally, at a quiet cafe with lemon tea and old jazz playing low. She looked taller than I imagined, wore her hair pulled back, said she still had nightmares sometimes. We didn't talk about him much. Mostly, we talked about the future. She wanted to launch a platform, anonymous, safe, for women in abusive relationships to get legal advice, emergency steps, and trauma resources. She asked if I'd help design it. Of course I said yes. It launched 3 months later. And within the first week, it got over 1,400 visitors. That's when it hit me. What we'd done wasn't just survival. It was infrastructure. We had taken what almost killed us and turned it into shelter for someone else. And Samuel? He had no idea how far the reach of his victims would go. He still thought we were women scorned. He didn't realize we were women rebuilt. Sometimes I still pass places that trigger something. The corner market where he once accused me of flirting with the cashier. The road near the hospital where I screamed into my hands so loud I couldn't hear myself think. The park where I used to sit in secret, wondering if I could live like this forever. But now, when I pass them, I don't feel fear. I feel ownership. Like I've repossessed the geography of my life. Nothing he touched gets to stay his. Not my body. Not my memories. Not my voice. It was a Wednesday. Cold, quiet, and unusually still. I remember because it was the first morning I woke up and didn't think of him first. No memory. No ache. No silent inventory of old bruises or buried screams. Just light on the ceiling, the smell of coffee drifting from my new kitchen, and the hum of a life that finally belonged to me. That was the moment I knew the war was truly over. Not because he apologized. Not because I won in court or in public. But because my nervous system no longer treated peace like a lie. Healing is never one moment. It's 1,000 quiet ones, stacked together like bricks, and suddenly you realize you built something he can't enter. That day, I deleted the last photos I still had of us. They were hidden in a folder called Old. A wedding photo. A vacation in Calabar. One of him with his arm around me at a restaurant I hadn't returned to since. I looked at them with a strange mix of detachment and sadness. Not for the man. For the version of me in those pictures, smiling too hard, eyes not quite focused, standing next to danger dressed in designer. I whispered goodbye to her, then deleted it all. The legal case closed quietly. We settled. He paid damages under seal. It wasn't about the money. It was about the record. The paper trail. The statement. My name next to truth. His next to consequence. The settlement came with an NDA, of course. But Amaka was smart. We negotiated language that let me speak publicly without naming him. Because stories aren't just court exhibits. They're caution signs. And I was never going to let mine be buried under the weight of a man's shame. The women from the collective, there were now 7 of us, kept in touch. We called ourselves the witnesses. Not because we watched our own abuse happen, but because we watched each other rise. Every story different, every scar uniquely shaped. But one thing bound us. We survived someone who swore we wouldn't. And we stayed standing. One woman, Miriam, had left with nothing but her daughter and a broken wrist. Now she runs a workshop helping other mothers start over. Another, Kalechi, filed her own civil case and used the payout to move out of the country. She sends us voice notes from London, always laughing, always free. We weren't just statistics. We were systems.